Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Outspoken Samantha. Please hit the thumbs up button and become a subscriber and help me to grow this channel. So today we're getting into kind of an interesting question, which is, which political party is more of a cult, conservatives or liberals? Spoiler alert, I don't think it's the people with the red hats, but what started this thought process for me is, well, on the right, we're constantly being called a cult. We're constantly being told that we're in a cult. And it's because a lot of people on the right wear red hats and we have a clear and defined leader. But I think that that is pretty much the only criteria that the left ever points to as far as being in a cult. But when it comes to who actually acts like a cult, if we're going to throw this word around, are people on the left. And I don't say that because of political bias. I say that because words and definitions actually matter. And if you look at the definition of a cult and the characteristics of a cult, you will find those behaviors far more on the left. So what kind of led me to wanting to discuss this was a conversation that Charlie Kirk had with a college student during one of his infamous Q&A sessions on a college campus. And this was the topic that she brought up as part of their conversation. Now, a few of the reasons that I wanted to touch on this was, first, yes, words and definitions matter. And if you're going to throw things out there, you need to have evidence to back it up. But also because these kids are in college and clearly they are being told what to say and not how to think, because they throw these words around and they don't want to present the facts or think about maybe that what they're saying isn't accurate and think about why they've been told to say these things. And to me, if you're paying this much for a higher education, then you should have a higher level of education that you're able to demonstrate. So let's go through a few of these clips and react to them. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. So let's get started.
My statement / question is, would you agree / disagree that the Make America movement, Make America Great movement, again, MAGA movement, is a cult?
No. Why don't you explain to me and the audience what is a cult?
Of course. Okay. Do you know any characteristics of a cult?
Sure. I mean, you could take the Jonestown death cult, of which there was a charismatic leader that constantly lied people, and they took them out of everyday normal life and leads them towards ostracization and cutting off of family ties. Am I getting closer to describing the Democrat Party?
According to the... No. What I'm talking about is MAGA. According to the Bethune Cook University website, characteristics of a cult include isolating members and criticizing them for leaving. Would you say that members of the MAGA movement will criticize others for leaving?
Well, yeah. I mean, but you guys criticize players that transfer out of the University of Tennessee football team. That's not a cult.
So I feel like she's reaching already. I mean, so far, the only thing that she's been able to point to is criticizing people for leaving a political party, which is a relatively normal thing. And we do a lot of things that people criticize us for. We might criticize family members for not going to church or for quitting a job or not showing up for Christmas dinner. I mean, there's a lot of things that, decisions that people make that we criticize them for. That doesn't make you a cult. So if you're going to throw this word around, please provide examples. And when she's talking about characteristic of a cult is isolating people. We saw after the 2024 election, all of these people flooding TikTok with videos talking about how they were going to cut off family members. And I believe that this is from the consistent media repeated messaging, telling their base that if you associate with people that vote for Trump, then they are a danger. They are a threat. They consistently refer to Donald Trump and Elon Musk as a schmatzi. So the message there is not because they actually believe those things, but it's because they want to encourage their base to isolate themselves from us, because the biggest danger to the left are people being willing to have a conversation and find out that we're not this danger and they can't have that. But you don't see that on the right. You don't see when people leave the MAGA movement or maybe choose to vote Democrat, where a bunch of people are cutting them off and choosing to not have a conversation with them. They might cut them off because they become unhinged and unreasonable and make family gatherings miserable, but we're not cutting people off simply because they chose to vote a different way. So So far, the criteria leans more to the left.
Okay, what about the absolute authoritarianism without meaningful accountability?
Okay, so what you're trying to say is that, like, what the leader says, the leader gets, basically?
Yes, Trump.
We have lots of disagreements in the MAGA movement. In fact, I'm more pro-life than the president is. In fact, a lot of people in this audience would have differing views maybe on where the president is at on Israel or Gaza or Ukraine or Russia. In fact, some people in this audience might say the president is not as pro-Second Amendment as they would like. I would argue that we actually have far more intellectual diversity in the MAGA movement than your traditional Democrat Party.
When it comes to what it means to be a cult, you are not allowed to have intellectual diversity. You're not allowed to think for yourself. You're not allowed to question what the people at the top say. And I think it's interesting because whenever we have open disagreements on the right, I remember when the Trump administration first got into the White House around, January 20th or that week, there were all of these rumors going on about Elon Musk and Donald Trump having disagreements about whatever. I don't remember specifically what it was, but that sparked this reaction from the left saying, oh, look, there's already cracks starting to form. We told you that this was going to happen. They're already falling apart. They're already fighting. This isn't going to work. And on the right, we were going, no, they're just having a disagreement. And we're all voicing our opinions about that. And we're allowed to do that. And we do that without worrying about retaliation. We're not worried that if we side with either Elon Musk or Donald Trump, or we side with somebody else that's not Donald Trump, that somebody's going to show up on our doorstep and burn our house down. Like, we're not worried about that. And I appreciate that these conflicts happen publicly so that we can weigh in on them and that we can voice our opinions and let the administration know how we feel. Whereas on the left, you're not allowed to do that. And the way that they respond to conflict when they see it on the right is they think of total disaster because that's how they think. Because they think that any dissenting opinion means total catastrophe. And it's interesting because I was listening to a clip from CNN, and they were talking about Gavin Newsom and how he's recently kind of betrayed his party by daring to have conversations with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, and even going so far as to even slightly agree with some of the things that they have said. And they consider that a total betrayal. And now they're pretty much just saying that, Gavin Newsom should just buy a MAGA hat and become a Trump supporter because that's what he is now. But one of the panelists, as they were responding to some of the things that Gavin Newsom has supposedly agreed on, said that they already saw red flags with Gavin Newsom and his loyalty to the party years ago when he criticized Biden's handling of the southern border. So because he pointed out the reality of that situation, it was already sending up red flags to their party that he couldn't be trusted, that he needed to be separated a little bit from them because he was breaking away from the narrative where they were consistently telling us that everything was fine at the southern border. Because he dared to raise any question about it, suddenly they had to, put him on notice or put him on this probationary period because he was demonstrating disloyalty to their side. So it's just absolutely insane to me. So far, I feel like she's reaching, but let's go a little bit further.
I see where you're going with this and stating that not every person who, I guess, supports Trump is fully supportive of him, but I'm saying the MAGA movement who will agree with him no matter what.
Well, I just want to stop it right there because I am well aware that there are people that are part of the MAGA movement that if Trump jumped off a cliff, they would probably follow him. And I think extremist views from either side are not helpful and are very, very harmful. The difference is that I don't believe the extremist side of the MAGA movement that would follow Trump off a cliff. I don't think that they represent the vast majority of the people, and I don't think that they lead the party. He has people surrounding him that were former Democrats. He has a Kennedy in his administration. I mean, the Kennedys have been synonymous with the Democrat Party for decades. So the fact that RFK Jr. even put down his pride and said that the mission is far more important than the man, the goals of what I am trying to accomplish can be accomplished far more with Trump than with anybody on the Democrat side, speaks volumes. But I have said out loud before, I have tweeted about it, I've posted about it, I've talked about it. Anybody that has this extremist allegiance to Trump and doesn't question anything, I remember this actually happening when Ron DeSantis was running for president, and There were people that were like, hey, maybe he would be a better option. And all of these MAGA people were like accusing them of betraying Trump. To me, that was unacceptable. It's like we're allowed to consider whether or not there's a better option. And there are people in the MAGA movement that have that extremist view. And it worries me because I don't think that we should be worshiping him and thinking that there is no better leader or somebody that could do as an effective job. We need to be able to consider all of our options. But that mindset does not go into how decisions are made overall in the MAGA movement. Whereas on the left, all of their policies these days are made by the extreme, the people that are furthest left in their party, the most radical views. And that is why they are failing and they are losing at the rate that they are, because the reasonable people on their side of the aisle are not being listened to. And that's why most of those people have said, I'm going to go with Trump this time. There were tons of Democrats and independents that have probably historically voted for the left in the past that chose to abandon that side because they know that the radical far left extremists are the ones making the decisions right now. And they're like, that's too far from me. I need to be able to at least work with more reasonable people. So far, she's not doing great in her argument.
Would say, though, you know what was a cult? What was a cult is what we lived during COVID. During COVID, and allow me to build out the argument that no matter what the CDC or Anthony Fauci would say, you would have the little talking heads on television parrot it back, no matter how insane it was. We must close the schools, 6 feet to slow the spread, wear a mask while showering. Okay, I made that one up. But I mean, the point being is that far more had characterizations of what a cult would be than the traditional Make America Great Again movement.
And unfortunately, during COVID, it became a political issue where we just wanted kind of, reasonable approaches to this illness and to this pandemic. We weren't allowed to have those reasonable conversations, especially the more information that we learned, we're realizing, who does this really affect? It's not kids in schools, it's the elderly. So why are we not focusing primarily on them? It became this thing where everybody had to treat it like it was this fatal illness. And anybody that didn't choose to mask up at all times or line up to get the COVID shot was endangering everybody. They, again, used these very cult-like fear tactics to get people to obey. And we had people on the left that didn't even question it, that said it's totally reasonable to expect perfectly healthy people to get a vaccine in order to keep their job. They held people's livelihoods hostage in order to force them to comply. And the base got behind them and harassed and bullied anybody that didn't agree with it and didn't want to go along with it. There was no ability to question the decisions that were being made or, is there any evidence to suggest that keeping 6 feet away from somebody is actually going to help slow the spread? Once we saw what was happening with the vaccines and that we were repeatedly told this is going to stop the spread, this is going to stop the passive infection, and we saw that it wasn't, there were still people saying that this was stopping the infection, that this was something that people needed to do. And it's like, well, if it's not doing the thing that you said it was going to do, then why would I get it? That doesn't make any sense. And even years after that, we had Democrat politicians saying, I got COVID today. I'm so glad I had the vaccine, that it saved my life. And it's like, well, how do you know that it saved your life? Because I never got the COVID vaccine. I've had COVID twice and I'm perfectly fine. So you don't know if it's because you had the vaccine that it didn't turn into a more severe case, or just because you have an immune system or you're a relatively healthy person that is likely to survive this thing. So there was no ability to question it, and it became this completely insane issue. So another example that Charlie Kirk pulls out is how at the State of the Union address, all of the Democrats remained seated as this young boy with cancer came out and was made this honorary, I believe it was an FBI agent or a CIA agent, I can't remember. And they refused to stand up and even put their politics aside and support this young person who had overcome unimaginable battles. Never mind that he was Black and consistently insist that they're the party of the minorities and the marginalized and of diversity. They couldn't support this kid because it had something to do with Trump. And this was her reaction to that.
I believe that what they were doing was standing against Trump's hypocrisy and his narcissism and his way of making himself look good by using other people who are marginalized to make himself look good.
Like this? I mean, I can see the argument about using this kid with cancer to make himself look better. I mean, politicians do crap like this all the time. But until Trump puts up a statue of this kid or a memorial, which honestly, arguably would be a better choice than George Floyd, it's not the same.
You asked me for more examples.
Yes.
The day of the State of the Union address, all 22 Democrat senators repeated the very same video on social media, mindlessly like robots.
What video?
The same incantation with not even like an iota of creativity or ingenuity, like just repeating it like as if they've been hypnotized into a... Got it.
I have not seen that video.
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down, they're up. Inflation is getting worse, not better. The prices of grocery, gas.
So one of the main aspects of a cult is a leader, a charismatic leader that people will follow blindly no matter what. The leader of the MAGA movement is Trump. Who are you stating the leader of the Democratic Party is that people will follow blindly without questioning no matter what?
Well, I mean, there's...
And I'm hearing tons of different examples, so that can just tell you there's not one.
Okay, again, so it could be Obama, it could be Rachel Maddow. I mean, the point being is that I don't even think it's the strongest argument to call either party a cult. That's not why I'm up here.
So if you want to watch the full video, I will link it in the description box below. You can watch it uninterrupted. I think it also demonstrates a cult-like mindset when someone brings something to your attention and you're like, I haven't seen that. Because to me, that says that you should question the information and the sources that you're relying on, because they're not providing information to you that would make you question or support for them. I have said before on this channel before that I am somewhat of a true crime person. I really like watching it. And I am particularly fascinated with cults. And a couple of things that have always stood out to me about them is the isolation from their family members, being willing to cut off your parents or your own children if they are not in line with your beliefs and the leaders of your party tell you that you need to break away from them because they're a threat. Like, those are things that consistently happen across cults. And I know that she brought up this, singular charismatic leader, but when you have everybody in your own party at the top of your leadership being given a script to repeat, to me that there is somebody in charge of that, or at least a small group of people in charge of that. And we may not know exactly who is providing the script, but because they're all saying the same things, to me, it says that it's coming from a singular source. That aspect of it is this: it can be an allegiance to one particular leader, or an unwavering allegiance to an ideology as well. Another couple of aspects of these groups that fascinate me is the unquestioning allegiance to whatever it is that they say. When she says whatever Trump wants, Trump gets. But he is the president. The president does have a certain level of authority where he gets to make decisions, and hopefully he is listening to the people. But that there is a certain level of decision making that comes with that. But on the Democrat side, when it comes to whatever the president wants or the leaders of the party want, they get. If they want you to believe that the border is closed and safe, then you will believe that the border is closed and safe. If they want you to believe that the president is fine when he's clearly not, then people will defend that and attack anybody who questions it from the other side without a second thought. If they want you to believe that men can be women, people from their side will believe that men can be women, no matter how many examples you give of science and biology, and the fact that they all agreed with this up until, the last few years. This was something we were unified on. It's the fact that they can present anything to their side on the basis of just opposing people that don't agree with them, and they will accept it and not go against it in any way, and actually do the work of their leaders by attacking the opposition without thinking about what it is that they're doing. Another thing that really stands out to me in cults is their being able to be convinced to do things that don't make sense and are actually dangerous and harmful. And I think we have seen this with the allegiance and the dedication to the transgender ideology, and being convinced that drugging your child or allowing them to mutilate their bodies is perfectly fine. And it's a sign of compassion and good parenting. I've seen in tons of these groups and these communities, not, in cult communities, where they are willing to harm their children. They are willing to harm each other. And this is a sign of their dedication to the party and their ideology, and a sign of, a higher form of thinking that from the outside looking in, we're like, how can you be convinced that this is normal? How can you be convinced that this is okay? How does this not raise red flags for you? But when you hear repeated messaging telling you that this is okay and that this is just, this is progress, then to me that that says that you are part of something that is dangerous, that goes against all reason, and that clearly represents a cult. And in my opinion, and I think probably in the opinions of a lot of people, this is what has led to the division in this country, just being willing to label people as something absolutely horrendous, like a racist or a bigot, and not think that it actually matters if that person actually lives up to the definition of those words. Anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. I know this was a bit of a longer one, but I wanted to touch on it, and I just thought it was an interesting subject. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Again, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. YouTube is absolutely throttling my channel right now. So if this video did reach you, please hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it. Other than that, keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.